Welcome to Jumping Into Solutions, Episode 4. Today we're going to be talking about gas stoves versus electric stoves. I'm here today with Katie Booth, and she is going to tell us all about her stove. Hi, Katie.
Hi, so happy to be here.
Oh, great. Thank you for letting us do this. This is so nice. Can you tell me about your, it's an induction electric stove? Yeah, tell me about it.
Yes, so we got this stove about 4 or 5 months ago. The reason we got the stove was because we're going to be remodeling in the next couple of years. So we're swapping out appliances in advance of that. We don't have a vent in our house. And so we have 2 small children and one of them has asthma. And so after research, we figured that electric was a better solution. And I love to cook, so I was really excited about what an induction stove could offer.
Now, there's a lot of people out there that don't know what an induction stove is, me included. So can you please tell me how it works?
Yeah, so how this works is, and they're all different kinds of stoves and ranges, but induction basically means that it only turns on if there's a pot or a pan on the burner. That's the same size as the burner, and then you can turn it on. And so when it's on, if you take the pot off, that burner will turn off, and it's because the heat is conducted magnetically.
Oh, okay. So where would you turn it on?
So our stove, I like the traditional knobs. So we have knobs. So this is the burner for this one, so you can see it turns on, and then my whole cook screen turns on. This red light indicates that one of the burners is on, and this light shows that that burner is on and that there's a pan on it.
Gotcha.
So, do you want to see what happens when I take the pan off?
Yeah, that would be great, because I understand they turn off the pan, kind of ignites it.
If you take the pan off, it will take a second. But this starts to turn off and flash.
Oh, that is so neat.
So that means that you can't accidentally leave it on, because you can't tell. Like with gas, you can tell if there's a flame or not, but with this you can't tell. So if there's nothing on that burner, it turns off automatically.
Oh, that is so good.
Really
That's
great.
So good for, especially if you're an elderly, you worry about your elderly
or
parent
kids.
or kids. Oh my God, that is so great. That's a great feature. The other issue that people are always concerned about with going from gas to electric, they don't want to have to wait for it to get hot.
Yeah.
So what kind of timeline are we looking at here?
So that's something you have to adjust to with an induction stove, because it gets hot really fast.
Oh, so it's sort of the opposite of what you would think, because you're turning the fire on, it's instant. So
totally,
but it gets hotter.
It's super fast. Like I can boil a pot of water on this burner, and the burner is the size of this pan in about 2 minutes.
Oh my gosh!
From cold to boiling. It's really fast.
Wow.
So at first you have to get used to that, because it's much faster than gas. But I also find that there's a lot more precision, because you can really clearly, on the knobs, you can see really exactly how hot the burner is.
Right. So now it sounds like you had a gas stove before.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some of the differences? I mean, you've mentioned a few right now, but what were some of the things you noticed that were different?
I think we also got a much higher and nicer stove, knowing we're going to have it for a very long time. So we chose to do that because it's our first real big appliance we've bought. The speed has been amazing.
Wow.
Also, because this is an electric one, it's connected to my Apple Watch, so whenever my timer goes off, I get an alert on my watch and on my phone. We haven't used this functionality, but you can also turn it on with your phone. You can also plug in recipes that require different types of precision cooking and temperature change into the stove, and it will do it automatically.
Okay.
And then I also love the 2 stoves, or ovens, I guess.
That is so neat.
2 ovens.
Can you show me what's what?
Yeah, so I roast a lot of vegetables.
Okay.
And so this way, on a hot day, I can just heat up the smaller oven and do a huge pan of something roasted.
Wow. Okay.
And so it's actually energy efficient because you only need to use half of the energy,
I was
right?
going to say, when it boils in 2 minutes, you've got to save energy too, because you're not waiting that 5-10 minutes or something.
Yeah.
Really boil very good.
Yeah.
And the bottom, is that just a bigger?
Yeah, so this is just a bigger one, and this one has 4 racks, so you could fit a turkey in the very bottom of this one, or really big items. One other thing I love is that this stove actually has a warming element in the back. So this is not an induction burner, but it will just keep things warm if you put it there.
So is this also a convection oven too?
Yeah.
Right, yeah, I love the convection because
it
heats things unilaterally, which is great. Wow, this is so great. So another question I have is, what made you decide to switch from gas? Was it reading about it, where you can, because I know the gas outgasses, unfortunately.
Yeah, totally.
And it can affect health. So was it related to that, or can you? Yeah,
it was a combination of that, and also wanting to have a really nice cooking experience.
That's always fun.
So I think it was when we made the decision that we needed a new stove before we were going to remodel and put an event, we knew we would not get gas.
Okay.
So the first thing we did actually was call our electrician and say what happens, what do we need to do, and so we had to get the gas turned off for the stove area, and he had to put in a new outlet, but that took about 3 hours.
So do you notice a smell difference? I guess you do, because with the gas, you turn it on and you do have some odors from the...
Yeah, there's no odors like that.
Wow, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know the big concern now is that it can, add to people that have asthma.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so, but that's great. This is really good. So, is there anything else you want to tell me about your stove that you've found to be quite different?
Yeah, it's really easy to clean.
Okay.
There's no burners to lift off and on. So it's really easy to clean.
That is great, yeah, because
it's just, you just wipe it.
Yeah, that's a plus.
Yeah. One thing that I love, and I would encourage anybody that's thinking of making the switch to do, these 2 burners, I can turn them on to become 1 burner. So I have a grill that I can put on this that's the same size, and then the whole grill heats up.
Okay.
So we use that for grilling vegetables, for making burgers. I can make 6 burgers at once and they cook perfectly evenly. So some stoves have that, but not all of them. So if you like to cook that way, I would imagine that. That might be good. So that would be another thing that I really love about the stove.
Absolutely. And environmentally, it's always great to not be using gas now.
Totally.
Going to electric. So
yeah.
Well, this is great, Katie. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for visiting.
Hi, everyone. We have our latest Jumping into Solutions episode. And as you saw from our little video, this one is about induction stoves. And I want to thank Pat and Katie Booth. Katie, thank you for letting us into your home to look at your beautiful new stove. And we have a speaker today, Dr. Mary Williams. She is a pediatric dermatologist. She's retired from UCSF, and she is a board member of Physicians for Social Responsibility. Thanks for coming, Mary.
Pleased to be with you.
And I'm going to start out. Katie referred to some of the negative health impacts from gas stoves. And I know this was a concern of hers because she has 2 small children, and they both have experienced asthma. And that was one of the reasons they switched. So can you talk a little bit about the negative health impacts?
Yes, I think it's something that we've really been learning more about in recent years. I think most of us always assumed that, although we knew that gas isn't healthy to breathe, we assumed that we weren't being exposed to it because the flames were getting rid of all the gas as the flames burned. But now we know that indeed the gas is leaking out into our homes. There have been a number of studies that have shown that by and large, most gas into most homes is leaking out. And in one study, it showed that the levels of of gas leaking are more. You're exposed to more methane gas when your stove is turned off because it's leaking all the time than you even are when the burner is on or when it's first on and before it's lit. But
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Scary.
yes, but methane isn't the only thing that's not good for us that's coming out of our gas stoves. As you burn the gas, it's generating a number of volatile compounds, a number of gases, nitrous oxides. Nitrogen oxides are a class of chemicals that are well known to be highly irritating to the airways and have been associated with provoking respiratory infections. I'm sorry, not respiratory, provoking asthma and other respiratory conditions and causing flares, etc. So it's producing nitrogen oxides. It's producing carbon monoxide, which of course is toxic to us. And underscores the importance of monitoring for carbon dioxide in our homes if we are using gas. It generates benzene. And indeed, benzene can be coming into the gas with the methane because our gas isn't just pure methane. It's got other things in it, and benzene is one of them. Well, benzene's a carcinogen. It's toxic to our livers. And indeed, the levels of benzene that are emanating from gas stoves have been shown to be equivalent to living in a household where there's secondhand smoke.
Oh, wow. So having a gas stove is like living with somebody who's smoking.
Indeed. And then there are other toxins, aerosol, like formaldehyde, other things that are not really good for our health. And then as one cooks and as the flame burns, it generates particulate matter. These are little tiny particles, so-called PM 2.5, which is a very small diameter particle that can not only get into our airways and cause irritation and produce flares of respiratory diseases, but it can also get into our circulation, and it's been associated with cardiac stress, strokes, and even chronic kidney disease. Many organ systems are affected by PM 2.5 once it enters our bloodstream.
Wow, that is amazing. What kind of population groups are most adversely affected? Are basically children, or is it elderly? Or could you expand on that a bit?
Sure, absolutely. Everyone's affected. So all the things I've mentioned are not good for any of us to be breathing, but there are definitely people who are at greater vulnerability, and children are high on that list because they are more active, so they're breathing more, they're taking in more volume, so they're getting greater exposure to all of these air toxins. And then elderly also, because they often have many pre-existing conditions that make them more vulnerable. Pregnant women, another very important category that we like to not have them exposed to toxins. And of course, anybody with any kind of chronic lung condition or chronic cardiac condition, these are more dangerous.
Now, it seems like I heard something, was some study about that kids with gas stove had more asthma.
Yes, thank you for reminding me. That's a very important study that looked at the prevalence of asthma in homes with gas stoves and determined that you could account for, across the U.S., 12% of childhood asthma could be attributed to having a gas stove in the home. And in California, that percentage is higher. 20% of California children's asthma has been linked to the use of gas stoves because we in California have been more in love with gas stoves.
Wow. That's a good reason to get rid of them right there. For all those every parent watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any group of people that are contraindicated or that shouldn't have an induction stove, pacemaker or something like that?
Yes, there's been some discussion in the medical literature that people with pacemakers either shouldn't have induction stoves or shouldn't need to be careful about it. As I've been reading through that literature, I would say it seems to be a low risk. Some authorities have recommended that anybody with a pacemaker should not get closer than their pacemaker should not get closer than 2 feet from the induction burner when it's on. But other authorities I have read have said that that's really only a problem for people with older pacemakers. My takeaway from reading all of this is if I had a pacemaker, I would go to my own cardiologist and inquire about my own specific risk.
Or maybe they would just buy an electric stove.
Or they
instead of
certainly,
induction.
if you don't want to go down that path, you certainly can just get a standard electric stove, because standard electric stoves don't generate an electromagnetic field.
Speaking of which, can you describe how a induction stove is different than a gas stove? Like, how does an induction stove work?
Well, the interesting thing about it, I think it helps to understand it by going back to thinking about what we're doing when we turn on our electric stove or turn on our gas stove, because what we're doing is we're either generating heat in a flame, and then that heat is transferred to our pot, or if we're using electric, we're heating up that metal coil and it's getting hot, and then we put our pot on it and pot gets hot. With an induction stove, you're directly heating the pot. You're not heating anything else first. So the induction stove creates an electromagnetic field. And if a pot is put on it that can respond to an electromagnetic field, then that pot will get heated up from being in that, exposed to that field. So one way you can tell if your pot is like that is you just take a common magnet and see if it'll stick to the bottom of your pot. And if it does, then it is a pot that is so-called induction ready. It can respond to this heat source. Beautiful thing about the induction heating and cooking is that when you take the pot off the burner, the heat goes away. There is no heat there other than a small amount that gets transferred to the ceramic top. But it's much less than with a ceramic electric stove or a burner on a gas stove.
So that's a huge safety advantage. I know that when my parents got old, my mother once left some paper bags on the stove, and the stove got turned on and they caught fire. So something like that couldn't happen with an induction stove.
Indeed, much safer with children around. You have much less worry about children coming into contact with the heating elements, the flames, or the hot burner.
You could put like your hand on an induction stove and it wouldn't be hot.
It's going to be a little warm because the ceramic surface will get heated up a little bit from the, but certainly nothing like the ceramic surface on an electric stove, which of course has the heating element right under it, and it's very hot.
Right. Or an electric burner, which is glowing red.
Exactly.
And then, are they more energy efficient?
They are. Because you're directly heating what you want to heat, which is your pot. You're not wasting energy heating something else, the flame or the electric heating element in an electric stove. So I have seen reports where the electric stoves with a ceramic top are not as efficient as induction stoves. Inductions are about 10% more efficient, and the gas stoves are at least inductions at least 30% more efficient over gas.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting you just said that, because I know, of course, water boils faster on an induction stove, but there's also a group from leafscore.com that did an efficiency study. And you can see out from the graph here that I'm showing that induction stoves are 85% more efficient. and electric is 74%, and gas is only 40% efficiency. So really, the induction stove is twice as efficient as a gas stove. So it would seem like in terms of savings in your pocketbook on your electric bill, that it really would help down the road to do that. So that's pretty incredible. I also wanted to ask you about the greenhouse gases. And I know you mentioned the different gases that are emitted when the stove is on and when the stove is off. Can you talk about the specific greenhouse gases that are emitted each way and their effects on climate?
Sure. Well, methane is a greenhouse gas, and it's a very powerful greenhouse gas. It's much more powerful, about 80 times more powerful than CO2.
And the gas that we're burning is actually methane, right?
That's right. The gas we are burning is methane, and the gas that's leaking into our homes is methane. And indeed, it's been shown that in California, about 10 to 15% of the overall pollution, the overall greenhouse gases that we are putting out into our atmosphere, 10 to 15% are coming from our home appliances. So they are contributing a large amount to global warming.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And then the CO2, of course, when we cook and use the energy, the methane burns and forms CO2. And so that is also polluting our environment and producing greenhouse gases. The other gases that are produced, such as benzene, nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, are not greenhouse gases themselves, but they're highly reactive gases, and they generate ozone in the presence of heat and sunlight. And so by putting these out into the atmosphere, we generate ground level ozone, which itself is not only a very powerful pollutant and dangerous to our health, but is also a greenhouse gas.
I also saw some research once that showed that the combination of ozone and particulate matter is particularly dangerous. So our stoves are generating both the ozone and the particulate matter, and that was a very dangerous combination for people with high blood pressure. Researcher at UC Davis who did a study on that.
Yes, ozone is a highly reactive molecule that's very damaging to our tissues. All of them, both skin and into our lungs as well. That's the same thing with the nitrogen oxides. They are also reactive. That is why they cause the inflammation and the injury to our lungs.
Wow, this is amazing. Now, I'm going to ask a question of Kathy. These induction stoves seem to be really much more energy efficient and much more healthier for you. If people wanted to switch to an induction stove, is there any rebates or is there any ways that can help with the cost of it?
Well, right now there should be a $250 rebate available, and I found this out by looking at Bayren. That's Bayren, and they have a lot of information about rebates and all kinds of things. But I think more importantly, the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed by the Biden administration, is going to be having a lot of rebates to switch to electric. And those rebates are going to start being available probably in 2024. So I can't tell you what those rebates will be now, but that's something that everybody should be looking at. And I'm sure that once they're there, Bayren will have information about them. But I'm seriously thinking at this point in time, especially after I have my husband watch this, that we've got to get rid of our gas stove. And if we do it next year, we should be able to get a nice rebate from the government. And I also believe a lot of those rebates are going to be scaled to people's incomes. So if you are lower income, you're going to get a much bigger rebate. So it'll make it affordable, much more affordable.
Oh, this is great. Well, maybe we could list them. We could list some of the links at the end of the video and also on the website, jumpingintosolutions.com. Well, this has been so great. Is there anything you want to add, Mary, to what you've talked about as a final message?
Well, I think we're all eager to save our planet and reduce our greenhouse emissions. And it's been a recent study showed that if we could switch to electric appliances, we could save 350 lives a year here in California and prevent over 600 cases of acute bronchitis a year and save $3.5 billion in health costs. So there are tremendous savings into the improving of our health through improving our indoor air environment.
3.5 billion. It would almost pay the state to put an induction stove in everybody's home. Thank you, Mary. That was a really good explanation of the health risks and why we should all be switching to, at the minimum, electric, but the best, induction.